Imagine a woman whose heart has frozen after betrayal, and a man who once loved deeply, but now lives only for his sick little daughter. They don't meet in a cafe. They don't meet at a party. They meet beside a broken, $1 million car. She laughs and says, "If you fix this engine, I'll marry you." But she doesn't know. He's about to fix the one thing she thought was beyond repair, her heart. They called her the Ice Queen of Adana Holdings. From the outside, Adana looked like a woman carved out of marble. Perfect posture, cold gaze, a voice that carried power and finality. In boardrooms, executives flinched at her silence more than they feared any raised tone. No one saw the girl who once believed in love. No one saw the wife who had waited late at night for a husband who chose another woman. Betrayal had not only shattered her heart, it had frozen it. And now she stood in heels worth more than some people's rent, staring at her broken Aston Martin Valkyrie, a $1 million machine that refused to breathe again. Around the car, mechanics hovered nervously. No one dared to touch it. This wasn't just a car. This was her pride, her escape, her control. Then, from the corner of the workshop, a man quietly stepped forward. His name was Obina. Grease marked his hands. His shirt was old. His eyes carried no fear, only a tired, distant gentleness. To the world, he was just another mechanic, another working-class man bowing to wealthy clients. None of them knew that those same hands had once built aerospace systems, had touched technology that kissed the edge of space. None of them knew he now lived only for his sick little daughter, fighting every day to keep hope alive. He didn't ask permission. He didn't introduce himself. He simply listened to the engine like a doctor listening to a patient's heart. Minutes passed. Then silence. Then the engine roared back to life. Shock rippled through the room. Adana turned slowly, meeting his eyes for the first time. And in that moment, without either of them realizing it, two broken souls, standing in the same place, felt the first crack in their loneliness, because the truth is, never judge someone by their job title. The most powerful people often look the most ordinary. Anna didn't know why she stayed. The car was fixed. The problem, impossible they had called it, had been solved by a man who looked like he belonged everywhere except a place like this. She should have left the moment the engine purred back to life. That is what the old Adana would have done. A quick nod. A curt thank you. Then gone, back to her glass towers, cold conference rooms, silent penthouse. But something in the air had shifted, or perhaps something inside her had. Her eyes followed Obina as he wiped his hands on a worn cloth, his movements gentle, careful. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't even smiling. It was as if he expected life to remain heavy, no matter what small victory he achieved. "You saved me a 7-figure headache," she finally said. He lifted his gaze to her. "I only fixed a machine. Most people here were afraid to even touch it." "Machines," he replied quietly, "are easier than hearts." The word stayed with her longer than she expected. As she turned to leave, she noticed a small, faded pink backpack resting on a nearby bench, tiny shoes tucked neatly beside it. Something about the neatness of it, the care, stopped her again. "You have a child?" she asked. Obina hesitated, then nodded. "A daughter. Is she with you?" "In the office," he said. "She isn't strong enough to stay home alone." There was a pause, a strange one. Curiosity battled restriction, the strict rules Adana had built around herself for years. "May I meet her?" He seemed surprised by the request, but he agreed. The office was small, humble. Soft light filtered through dusty blinds. And there, sitting on a low couch, wrapped in a pale sweater much too big for her tiny body, was a little girl. Her eyes were huge, bright, innocent. "Zara," Obina said gently, "we have a guest." Zara looked up. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The world appeared to shrink into that space. A powerful businesswoman and a fragile child whose heartbeat ran on borrowed time. Zara studied her carefully, her head tilting slightly. Then she smiled. Not the polite, trained smile of executives. Not the cold, practiced expression Adana was used to seeing when people wanted something from her. This smile was pure. "You are very beautiful," Zara said softly, like a princess in a fairy tale. Adana didn't know how to respond to that. Compliments had long since lost meaning. But something about the way the words came from that tiny mouth reached a piece of her that had been sleeping for years. And you, Adana answered carefully, crouching down to her level, are very brave. Zara frowned slightly, as if thinking deeply. Then she said the words that would echo inside Adana's soul for the rest of her life. You are a princess, she paused, her eyes filled with gentle sadness. But your castle is empty. That is why you are sad. The sentence was simple, childlike, but it landed like a storm. In that moment, Adana's world cracked open. She had castles. Many of them. High-rise buildings, seaside villas, penthouses overlooking cities that never slept. She had wealth, power, control, everything someone could dream of. But she had never once heard her home described as empty. And yet, for the first time, she saw it. The long dining table where no laughter lived. The king-size bed where no one ever lay beside her. The echo of her heels in hallways far too big for one lonely soul. Empty. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let tears fall. Not in front of child. Not after all these years of teaching herself that tears were weakness. But Zara felt it anyway. The little girl slowly stood and, with effort, walked toward her. Every step was careful, measured, as though life itself was counting her heartbeat with each movement. She wrapped her fragile arms around Adana's neck, and in that embrace, so light, yet so powerful, the Ice Queen felt something she had forgotten existed. Warmth at a heartbeat that wasn't her own, pulsing against her chest at a love that expected nothing. From the door, Obina watched silently. His eyes held worry, surprise, and something else, gratitude. He had spent his life protecting Zara, preparing himself for the worst, fighting impossible battles with doctors, machines, fate. But right now, it was his daughter who was healing someone else. Adana slowly held her back, carefully, as if afraid to break a piece of glass. No one had held her like this in years. No one had needed her without wanting something in return. You don't have to be sad, princess, Zara whispered. You can sit in my castle. It is small, but Daddy puts love in it every day. Adana closed her eyes for a brief second, and when she opened them again, the world seemed different, softer, less cruel. She glanced at Obina, who quickly looked away, uncomfortable with emotion. You built her a beautiful castle, she said as he crouched beside them. No, she built it. I just try to keep the walls standing. In that moment, Adana realized something that money had never taught her. There was a kind of wealth that could not be transferred, bought, invested, or stolen. It was found only in love that sacrificed, that in moments so pure that time itself stood still to honor them. And somehow, that love was melting the ice around her heart, drop by drop, breath by breath. Because the truth was clear now. Sometimes, the pure heart of a child can heal wounds that time never could point to. Broken souls had met once before by a broken car, but now a tiny, fragile heartbeat was quietly rewriting their fate. It started with a flash, that a single, careless moment frozen by a stranger's camera. Adana stepping out of the workshop. Obina standing beside her. Zara smiling between them, holding Adana's hand as if she had always belonged there. One photograph. Then another. Then a headline that spread like wildfire across screens, newspapers, and whispered conversations. Ice Queen melts for a blue-collar worker. CEO falls for mechanic. Billion-dollar empire shaken by a man with grease on his hands. The world turned their moment into a mockery. Inside her high-rise office, Adana watched her face circle the globe on every monitor. Comments flooded in, cruel, judgmental, amused. This a midlife crisis. Is she slumming for fun? Maybe she's finally lost her mind. But none of them knew the truth. And no one knew about the child who had placed her tiny arms around a queen, who had forgotten what love felt like. And no one knew about the silent man who fixed broken things not with noise, but with care. And no one knew how close her frozen heart had come to remembering how to beat. They only saw status and scandal, and society does not forgive weakness, especially in a woman who holds power. The boardroom was colder than usual. The very men who once trembled in her presence now sat straighter, bolder, as if her humanity had stripped her of authority. Your personal life is becoming a liability, one of them said. Our stock dropped 3 points in 2 hours, another snapped. This company is built on image, Adana, the oldest one added. And you're damaging it by associating with someone so inappropriate. Inappropriate. The word echoed in her mind. All she saw when she closed her eyes were Zara's fragile arms. Obina's quiet dignity. A small room filled with warmth, but around her now sat glass tables, polished suits, and sharp tongues. You must release a statement immediately, the head of PR insisted. You must deny any emotional connection. Say he is an employee, or better, say he is no one. No one. Her hands tightened under the table. He is not, she started, then stopped, because the truth was dangerous, and Adana had built her empire on control, not confession. If this scandal continues, the chairman said, low and threatening, we will have no choice but to remove you as CEO. Do you understand what that means? Your life's work, your position, your influence, gone. The silence that followed was crushing. In that moment, she wasn't the ice queen. She was just a woman standing at a crossroads between love and legacy, heart and hierarchy. I understand, she said finally, her voice controlled, emotion locked behind steel once again. Outside the building, cameras waited for her. People shouted questions that sliced like knives. Are you dating the mechanic? Are you ashamed of being seen with him? Do you think he is using you for money? Is this a publicity stunt? Adana stood before them, flawless, composed, the queen the world expected to see. And somewhere far away, Obina fixed his eyes on a small phone screen as he watched it happen live. Her lips parted. This was the moment that would decide everything. He is nobody to me, she said coldly. A worker who repaired my vehicle. Nothing more. A pause. Then the dagger. There is, and there never will be, anything between someone like him and someone like me. The world erupted into noise, laughter, applause, approval. Her board members relaxed. The company stabilized. Investors breathed easier. The Ice Queen had returned. But in a small, quiet room on the other side of the city, a different kind of silence filled the air. Obina didn't move. He simply turned off the device. Zara looked up at him from her bed. Is the princess angry with us? She asked softly. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle. No, my love. She is just lost in a big castle. Will she come back? He forced a smile. Princesses don't visit little castles for very long. Zara nodded slowly, trying to understand a world that was already too heavy for a tiny heart. That night, Adana stood alone on the balcony of her penthouse. The city lights stretched out like a crown beneath her. She had won, protected, secured, respected, but she had never felt more empty. The silence in her home was no longer peaceful, IT screamed. And for the first time in her life, she realized something terrifying. She had just broken the heart of the only man who never tried to touch hers for money, status, or power. The only child who had ever seen her as more than a businesswoman. The only moment that had ever felt real. Days turned to weeks. She drove past the garage once, twice, 3 times. The lights were off. The sign had been taken down. Obina had vanished. No calls, no messages, no explanation. Just absence. Her phone remained stubbornly silent. And as she stared at the empty streets, a cold truth wrapped itself around her throat. She had chosen fear over love, and love had walked away without making a sound. Because that is the thing about people like Obina. They do not beg. They do not argue. They simply disappear and take the warmth with them. When we choose fear over love, we always lose something precious. And Adana, sitting at the top of the world, finally understood. Her greatest loss was not A-M-A-N-I-T, was the part of herself that had dared to feel again. The phone rang at 2:17 a.m., not the sharp, professional ring of business. This was frantic, broken, panicked. Adana was half asleep when she grabbed it, irritation already forming on her lips, until she heard the voice on the other end. Ms. Adana, a trembling nurse asked. You are listed as the emergency contact for Zara Obina. She has been rushed into critical care. Her heart condition has worsened. Adana sat straight up. For a moment, the world tilted. That must be a mistake, she whispered. I am not. But the nurse was already speaking again, faster now. Sir Obina specifically requested your name. He said if anything ever happened, you would come. The line went silent, and something inside Adana shattered. He had never defended himself when she denied him. He had never spoken badly of her. And even after she had hurt him in front of the entire world, he trusted her. She didn't change out of silk pajamas into designer clothes. She threw on the first coat she could find and ran barefoot to her car. The city was still asleep as she sped through empty streets. The world nothing but blur and breathing, and a name whispered over and over in her. Mine, Zara Zara. Zara, the hospital. Anxiety hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Doctors moved between rooms. Nurses whispered. Machines beeped like fragile heartbeats holding on by a thread. And then she saw him. Obina, sitting on a cold plastic chair near the ICU doors. His posture was bent. His hands trembled in his lap. His face was hollow, as if someone had carved out every last bit of strength he owned. This was not the quiet, unshaken man who had once fixed the impossible. This was a man breaking. When he looked up and saw her, confusion washed over his face, followed by something far more painful than anger, disbelief. You came, he said quietly, as if speaking might break the moment. She nodded. You listed me. I don't remember doing that, he murmured, but deep down, they both knew it was true. She moved closer. Slowly, carefully. How is she? Her voice finally cracked. They're preparing her for emergency surgery. Her heart is failing. The word fell between them like broken glass, failing Zara's heart. The same heart that had healed Adana's in a single hug. Adana closed her eyes briefly. Then something inside her hardened, not into ice this time, but into determination. Where is the chief cardiologist? She demanded, already pulling out her phone. Within an hour, the best pediatric heart surgeon in the country had been called out of retirement. Another was flown in from abroad. Specialists in rare congenital conditions arrived in hurried, breathless waves. Money meant nothing to her at that moment. She used it the only way that had ever truly mattered. Save a life. Save her. She paid for equipment the hospital had never even dreamed of owning. She ordered the operating theater to be prepared as if a head of state were entering it. She had the best team assembled within hours. And when Obina tried to stop her, tried to say something about cost, responsibility, pride, she simply looked into his eyes. You saved something of mine once, she said softly. Let me return the favor. He knew she didn't mean the car. Hours passed like years. They sat on opposite ends of the same bench, yet closer than they had ever truly been. No reporters, no board members, no society, no roles. Just a man and a woman waiting on love, time, and God. Once a nurse stepped out, Zara's tiny backpack in her hands. She wouldn't let anyone take this off her, she said gently. And she keeps asking for you both. Both. The word wrapped around Adana's heart on a quiet piece of paper. While the world held its breath, Adana signed something else, a trust fund. Enough for Zara's medical care for life. Enough for education, comfort, dreams. Enough that Obina would never again have to choose between medicine and food, between hope and reality. She didn't announce it. She didn't take credit. She simply handed it to the hospital administrator and said, For Zara, that's all you need to know. Because love does not need witnesses. The doors finally opened 11 hours later. A surgeon stepped out, exhausted, mask lowered, eyes filled with something close to grace. She is stable, he said. The surgery was a success. The world exhaled. Obina collapsed forward in relief, his face in his hands, silent tears soaking into his palms. He didn't try to hide them anymore. And without thinking, Adana placed her hand on his shoulder. He didn't pull away in that hospital hallway. Under ugly white lights and cleaner that smelled of loneliness, the queen and the mechanic stood together as two broken humans who had not lost everything after all. She asked for you, the nurse added. They entered the room side by side. Zara lay in the bed, pale, delicate, but breathing steadily. Tubes surrounded her, yet somehow she managed the softest smile as their eyes met. "My princess came back," she whispered. Anna knelt instantly beside her, taking her small hand, careful not to disturb the wires. "I never really left," she replied, tears finally free to fall. "I was just learning how to find my way." Zara turned to her father. "I told you she would find my castle again." Obina's voice trembled. "You were right, love." For a moment, there was no world outside that room, the NO class. No status, no judgment. Just three heartbeats connected by something greater than names or titles. Out in the hallway later, when silence returned, Obina finally spoke what had lived inside him since the day she walked away. "You hurt me," he said gently. "But today you saved her. And that means more to me than my pride." She looked down. "I chose fear," she admitted. "And it cost me everything that mattered." He stepped closer just an inch, just enough for warmth to move between them again. "Maybe," he said, "it didn't cost you everything. Maybe it brought you back." In that quiet corridor, they both understood something the world had never taught them. Love was not in luxury cars or powerful last names. IT lived in hospital corridors. I in unpaid tears. I in silent sacrifices. I in showing up when it was easier to stay away. Real love appears in the darkest moments. And sometimes it takes almost losing everything just to recognize what is worth saving. The world expected Adana to fight back. To release statements. To reclaim her throne. To prove she was still the ice queen of corporate empires. But the world did not understand something simple yet powerful. The old Adana had already died in a hospital hallway, beside a little girl whose heart fought harder than most grown men ever could. 3 months after Zara's surgery, a quiet announcement shook the business world. Adana Alera was stepping down as CEO, and scandals, lawsuits, dramatic. Interviews, just a short letter. "I am choosing a life that finally feels real." They called her foolish, weak, emotional, wasteful. But while they were busy talking, Adana was building something they could never comprehend. Together with Obina, she opened a humble space in an old industrial part of the city. A place filled with the scent of oil, metal, and fresh beginnings. They called it Phoenix Garage. Not just a repair shop, but a rebirth, a place where young men and women rejected by society, labeled unimportant, or forgotten by the system could learn skills, rebuild their confidence, and find dignity in their hands again. Obina taught them engineering, mechanics, patience. Adana taught them discipline, vision, and the kind of courage that could not be bought. And right in the heart of it all was Zara, healthier now, stronger. Her laughter echoing through the garage as she handed tools to the trainees, or sat on Obina's shoulders pretending to be the queen of a kingdom made of tires and dreams. "One day," she told Adana with a mischievous grin, "this will be the biggest castle of all. And you," Adana smiled, brushing her hair back, "will always be its heart." A year passed like a peaceful dream, and no cameras. No pressure, no masks, just purpose, love, and healing. On the anniversary of the day their lives had collided, Obina asked Adana to walk with him through the garage after closing hours. The sun dipped low, painting the walls in gold. He stopped beside the very workbench where once he had fixed her impossible car. Adana noticed something shining there, a small, polished spark plug, not new, but carefully cleaned, cherished, transformed. "The same one," she whispered. "The one that started it all." He nodded. Took it in his hand. "A broken car brought you to me," he said quietly. "A broken heart brought you to Zara. And a broken world brought us both here." Then he knelt, right there on the oil-stained floor of the garage that had become their sanctuary. "With no palace, no audience, no $1 million ring," he continued, holding out the spark plug like a sacred jewel. "But with a whole new life I want to build beside you. Adana, will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes, not the kind caused by pain, but the kind born from miracles. She didn't look at the spark plug. She looked at him. Then at Zara, who nodded excitedly, already wiping her happy tears, and Adana smiled. The real smile. Not the Ice Queen smile. Not the CEO smile. The woman smile Yes, she whispered. Then louder for the universe this time. Yes. In that moment, no one saw a queen marrying a mechanic. They saw two survivors choosing life. Two broken souls becoming one unbreakable home, that a man who fixed engines, that a woman who fixed hearts, and a little girl who fixed their fate. Because the truth had always been simple. Two broken people can build something beautiful. And sometimes the best castles are not made of stone and gold, but of love, second chances, and a heart that finally learns how to beat again. Sometimes life breaks us, not to destroy us, but to make space for something better. Adana thought she had lost everything that mattered. Her empire, her identity, her worth. Obina believed he was destined to remain unseen, forgotten, unwanted. But that spark plug didn't just repair a broken engine. It connected two shattered souls at the exact moment they needed each other most. I in the grease, the silence, the struggle. They rebuilt more than machines. They rebuilt themselves. They found family. They found love. They found purpose. Because the greatest repair in the world is not in a garage. It is in the human heart. And sometimes, all a broken heart needs is the right mechanic.